What is up, everyone? Jeremy here. Welcome to another video in the tone sample series. In this video, if you haven't guessed it already, it's all about that bass. We are going to take a look at some incredible bass plugins from Neural DSP, Audified, and stock Logic Pro plugins. We're going to hear some high gain bass tones soloed and in context. So if that interests you, stick around. All right, so first things first, I'm gonna run through the 4 high gain bass tones that I've put together and the signal path that makes up each of them, or the signal chain rather. The first thing I wanna note is we have a low pass DI signal coming from Gin Bass, which is going to be our sub bass track. So this is just the straight DI output from Gin Bass, and it's got the low pass on it, just a tiny bit of compression to smooth it out a little bit, and this is what it sounds like. There you go. It is the sub bass. We don't want to put any gain or distortion on this. We want to keep that as is to really hold that low bottom end beef of the entire mix together. And if we put gain on it, it's not going to have the same effect. So we have that separated from the 4 I'm about to show you. So the first up is the stock Logic Pro bass amp designer with the Logic Pro pedal board. So the very first thing in our signal chain is the opposite of what you would expect from the previous track that I just mentioned, which is our sub bass, which in that one I should have mentioned has a low pass at 300 hertz. So anything above 300 hertz is completely cut off. There's nothing coming through, as you heard. In these next 4 tracks, it's the exact opposite. It's 300 hertz and above. I don't want the low sub bass. We have that in the DI track. So these are 300 hertz and up. And this is the exact same high pass you'll see in the following 3 tracks as well. So after that, we have just a tiny bit of compression here using the Slate Digital Virtual Mix Racks FG2A, which is based on an LA2A opto compressor. And that's just a tiny bit of compression happening there. Then we go into the stock Logic Pro pedal board. And as you can see, this is using the grit pedal. And you can see the settings I have on the pedal here. We're at about 10 o'clock on the volume, a little bit above 3 o'clock on the filter, and distortion is almost exactly at noon, just a little bit above. And those are the settings for the pedal board. And we move on to the bass amp designer, and quickly running through what I have here is I'm using the modern amp. I'm using the classic 8x10 cabinet, all the amp signal. There's no DI or mixed, it's all amp. And we're using the dynamic 421 microphone. I will quickly note that I'm using the same exact microphone in the Parallax and the Darkglass Ultra for obvious reasons, to try and get an even playing field across all of those plugins. However, the last one you'll hear with the Sphene Pro, I have no idea what microphones they use. As you'll see, there's a dial that just lets you change cabinets. So I'm not sure what speakers or cabinets or mics were used. It's probably on the website or somewhere. So I'll look that up and see if I can post it in the description or the comments of this video. But for now, I'm not sure what mics they used. So moving on with our signal chain is another instance of the Slate Digital Virtual Mix Rack. This is just some EQ, an absolute tiny bit of compression again here, so that we are putting a little tiny bit of compression on the now amped, going through an IR signal with the grip pedal on it. And it's doing almost nothing, just a tiny bit. Again, just some EQ here, and then a trimmer just to kind of pull back the volume a little bit. It was pretty loud. And then the last thing is another instance of Slate Digital's Infinity EQ here, just to notch out a couple frequencies that were ringing through and causing this annoying overtone on the bass tone here. So notch those out, and that is the entire signal chain for the bass tone that I put together with the stock Logic Pro bass amp designer and the pedal board. And here is what it sounds like soloed. Incredible, absolutely sick high gain tone from a stock Logic Pro setup. Obviously, there was some things used from the virtual mix rack from Slate Digital, which is not stock, but it's just basically some compression and EQ. So those are plugins you could use the stock Logic Pro plugins and have the same effect. So moving on to our next tone, which is the Neural DSP parallax. So the signal chain here is again the exact same 300 hertz and above high pass. So I'm not going to show that. It's the exact same Slate Digital virtual mix rack, LA2A, FG2A, opto compressor with the exact same settings. So I won't show that. So then we go into the then we go into the parallax, and you can see the settings I have right here for parallax. And looking at the cabinet section, again, you can see I'm using the dynamic 421, and here are my cab settings. And that's it. Those are the settings for parallax. So moving on in the signal chain, we have just, again, a very tiny bit of compression, again, just trying to smooth out the tone. And I think it's doing almost nothing, so I could probably even remove it. And then our trimmer again, just to kind of pull back the volume slightly. And then it goes into an instance of Infinity EQ, which in fact I can turn off because it's not doing anything. So we'll turn that off. And then this is our parallax tone. Again, another sick high gain bass tone. So we'll continue on, and we are now at the Neural DSP darkglass Ultra. Exact same signal chain as the parallax, and I can turn off the Infinity EQ here as well because I know that is not even being used. It's all off, and then the only difference here is the darkglass versus the parallax. So you can see the settings I have on the screen here for the darkglass Ultra. I'll show the cab settings, which again is using the dynamic 421 mic. You can see the placement of the mic there. And this is the tone we get with the darkglass. Incredible tone as well. All right, so the last tone that we have here is going to have the exact same signal chain as the last two, both parallax and darkglass. We have the high pass 300 hertz. We have the virtual mix rack opto compressor, the LA2A, just a tiny bit of compression there. And then we go into the Audified Sphene Pro. And then again, the virtual mix rack with, again, just a tiny bit of compression, if anything at all, with the trimmer. And so the Audified Sphene Pro plugin is right here. And you can see the settings I have. And the one thing that I wanted to point out here is, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this doesn't give me, mic and speaker cab placements. I just have a dial that I can turn here between A, B, C, D, and E cabinets. And then for the same thing for the amps, between 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. For this demo, I landed on cab A with amp 5, and you can see the rest of the settings I have here. We'll note the boost is off, and here is what this tone sounds like. So again, another sick high gain bass tone. I will note that of all of the tones that I've just demoed, listening to them soloed, the one that I am least impressed with is the Audified Sphene Pro. Now, I want to be very clear here that listening to something in solo like this out of context means almost nothing, right? It's when you put it in context. Does it fit the mix? Can you adjust it to fit the mix? And in almost every one of the cases of the plugins that I'm demoing in this video, yes, the answer is yes. You can tweak them, you can adjust the settings, you can change the cabinets, the amps, add some EQ, whatever it may be, to get them to fit really, really, really well in a mix. So let's go ahead and just listen to the settings I have right now and throw these tones into a mix and see what they sound like in context. So the very first one that we will listen to in context is the Logic Pro Bass Amp Designer with the grip pedal, and this is what it sounds like. And that one sits in this mix so damn well, it's incredible. I absolutely love this tone. It fits so well in context. So let's see what the parallax sounds like in context. Here we go. I love the tone that parallax provides. It is incredible in how you can adjust the mid distortion and high distortion separately with the EQ. It is incredible. That being said, it's not sitting super well in this context for me right now. I've obviously got more tweaking to do to really get it to sit well here. I think the level was too high from the get-go. It's actually still maybe a little too high, but it was just biting and cutting right through this mix, stomping on it, in fact. So I've got more tweaking to do, really kind of get it to fit better on this mix, but that gives you a general idea of how this thing sounds in context, right? So overall, it is a sick bass tone and will sit well in a mix. It just, I have more kind of tweaking to do really to get it to sit better in this mix rather. So, but there's an example. So we'll move on to the Darkglass Ultra. And here is what it sounds like in context. That is, for me, immediately comparable to the stock Logic Pro Bass Amp Designer with the grip pedal. They sound pretty darn similar in context like this. I think the Darkglass is biting a little bit harder, cutting through this mix a little bit more than the Logic Pro Bass Amp Designer. But overall, they're very comparable. They're both incredible high gain bass tones. So let's see how the Audified Sphene Pro sounds like in context, given I already mentioned that just from listening to all the tones soloed, it was my least favorite, at least with the settings that I have right now. So let's see what this tone sounds like in context. I mean, there you go, right? So listening to it soloed, I wasn't super impressed. In context, this thing sits pretty damn good in that mix. There's probably still a few tweaks that I would make, but overall, this is an incredible high gain bass tone and it fits well in context, as it should, right? So we don't just listen to basses or any instrument rather, just completely soloed. It's in context when things matter. All right, so there you have it. There is a quick run through of 4 incredible high gain bass tones that I put together using stock Logic Pro plugins, using Neural DSP, Parallax, Darkglass Ultra, and Audified Sphene Pro. Hit me in the comments. Let me know which of the 4 was your favorite. Which one or which of the 4 do you feel like sat in the mix in context the best? And what tweaks would you make? Like, how would you improve these tones and take it another step further? Hit me in the comments. I would love to know what your thoughts are. And if you dug this content, I've got a lot more things lined up. So hit that subscribe button down below. Don't forget to hit the bell so you're notified when I upload those videos. Hit like and share. And as always, thank you for watching and thank you for your support.